So about 2 years ago, I-Lann Martha was in her residency in Singapore for 3 months, and what was she going to do in Singapore for 3 months? So we suggested that she leave Singapore and go visit I-Lann in Kota Kinabalu, and that was where this show was born. So they had a meeting of the mind, a meeting of practice. These two powerhouse women artists who are really making a statement, not just for our country, but also for our planet. So, and they formulated this show, but it had to be a show together, but solo shows, because they had a lot to say, both of them. And when we asked them to do a gallery event, it was a symposium. So I said, wow, that's such a big word. And they're like, well, we're going to bring people and they're going to talk to each other, and hopefully the audience will chime in. So we have representatives, people from different places. We have people from Tawi, we have Omar from Tawi-Tawi. We have Kak Roziah from
Pulau Omadal, Semporna, Sulu Sea.
Sulu Sea. We have people from Bantayan Island. And they're going to talk about something which is super relevant, super important. They're going to talk about the environment, art, community practice, development. Not very sexy words in the world, but the world, our planet, as you know, is in crisis, and it is something that should move beyond the general sphere and become specific to our lives. So the way we're going to do it today, first we're going to have Martha speak with her gang, and then that's going to be like a 20 minutes.
Like an hour, 15 minutes.
Okay, if you don't know who Martha Atienza and I-Lann are, just Google them. Okay, so the way we're going to do it, we're going to have Martha Atienza first, with Hal, with Robert, and with Mario. Okay, and then they're going to speak for 20 minutes, and then there will be a short Q&A, and then it will be I-Lann's turn to speak. 30 minutes, right? I-Lann's turn to speak with Kak Roziah and Omar, and then we'll have a group panel discussion. So I invite all of you to put your questions to paper or to your mind, so you can ask them, because these people all come from different backgrounds. Well, very similar, but different. Okay. So I'd like to ask first I-Lann, Kak Roziah, and Omar to please join the audience first while Martha speaks. So maybe Robert, Roziah, and Martha, and Mario. Okay. So Martha, as an artist, I have no words to describe Martha. But she always keeps us, I think our gallery Silverlens is I would say, one of the more important galleries in the region, because we have these two artists. And this is a testament to not just the country, but the region coming together. So without further ado, Martha Atienza.
Thank you, Isa. Wow, so much pressure to talk now. Isa, Rachel, thank you for giving us this platform. It's really important, and thank you, I-Lann, for doing this together with me. And thank you to my boys for being here with me. But and of course the Silverlens team. Thank you so much for all the help with the show and organizing. So I'm not the best speaker, so I'm a bit nervous, but I thought I would like to share how Equation of State, the show, came about, because it's been kind of a combination of 10 years of working on Bantayan Island. Maybe just a little bit of a short background. My father is from Bantayan Island. He was a seafarer, and that's how he met my Dutch mother. And so my Dutch mother lives on Bantayan Island. And so I've been trying to figure out ways since 2010 to do projects on the island. And that's actually how we all met, by working together on the island. And when I started, I really had this very clear question of saying that I just wrote down. Can art tackle? Can it be a tool to tackle social, economic, and environmental issues? And the show Equation of State is kind of a result of all those 10 years of working on the island and experimenting, let's call it that. I'm not sure, maybe I can summarize a little bit. For me, it's really hard to put into words and summarize what the show is, because for me it stems to so many things. But I think the biggest thing that I'm looking at is a kind of a system that we are moving in, that the way that we've been working on the island is to try to tackle a different way of thinking, maybe. And so I see art as a way of thinking and as a tool in that way. And so when I share work in a space like this, I would really like someone to hopefully come up with their own conclusions and hopefully do their own research and think about actually the many things that we're talking about. Because we're not just talking about the sea level rising. I think we're talking about what this means for people living in, especially coastal communities. But first and foremost, I would really like to talk together with Mario, Robert, and Hal about the realities of trying to work to tackle these issues, basically. Because I can only specifically talk about Bantayan Island, but in Bantayan Island, the conversation of the environment is actually the last conversation we're having, because the foremost issues are really livelihood, it's food, it's survival. So that's why I'm so happy that Mario and Robert and Hal are here. Maybe I can even tell a little bit of history about how we know each other. Robert, we met, I think when you were how old?
18.
18, so it's...
So, naguguluhan ako paano ko maka-school and college kasi ang hirap sa Bantayan Island. So, nakilala ko si Martha, sabi ko sa kanya, ate, kahit anong trabaho papasokin ko, makapag-aral ako. So, ayun. Noong time, tinulungan niya ako.
Dancer ka ba sa ito?
So, yun pala. Nakalimutan ko na. Dancer pala. So, ayun. Basta, ang big change talaga sa akin. Kasi, when I first met Ate, so, lahat, mayroong pananaw na ako sa sarili ko, sa community, sa pamilya ko. Kasi pag wala, yung art kasi, pag hindi alam ng tao, okay, drawing at. Pero itong talk about personal, family. So ayun, parang naging open mind yung mga problema, ano yung dapat gawin. So, dyan ko na nakuha sa, ganito, wala. Kasi, hindi ko maintindihan yung mga works niya eh. Parang, ano yan, guys? Ano yung meaning ng mga, nakita ko in personal sa Singapore kasi dinala niya ako, nag-document kami ng trabaho niya. Sabi ko sa kanya,
Excuse lang din na makapunta ka.
sabi ko sa kanya, pwede mo na hindi ako mag-document muna, i-analyze ko muna yung trabaho mo. Yun, ito pala yung gusto mong ipaabot sa mga tao. Okay, alam ko na. Kahit hindi ako nag-barco. So, ganun talaga mga problema. Okay, ito pala.
Hindi ako marunong mag-Tagalog. So, English or Bisaya lang ako. But,
So, marami pang basta maraming big chance sa akin. So,
kasi ito siya, he was a dancer. They were doing b-boy dancing on the streets at night under the lights, under the poste. And so I would see them practicing and thinking, wow, these kids are really determined and they're so creative and they must have more potential, I'm sure, because I really don't know much about dancing. So I would drive them, I would do whatever I could then, because I just graduated the art school, but I mean, I really didn't know so much how I was going to survive with my own practice. But I taught them how to use the video camera and to explain the importance of documentation and documenting time. And then we just, when I started in 2010 with the project, Gilubong ang Ahong Pusod sa Dagat, My Navel is Buried in the Sea, together, they joined me documenting people working at sea, the men from Bantayan Island working on ships. I went on the big international ships myself, but when I returned to Bantayan, I started documenting all the fishing. And basically, Robert's been by my side through all those projects. But it was mostly what I was trying to do then. And well, I didn't totally understand what I was doing, but I had this vision that if the guys could just see how they were at sea, they would first and foremost be proud of who they are. Because especially the fisher folks in Bantayan, they always say, I'm not educated, I'm nobody, I have no voice, you know? And so I think the video camera has that power, you know, of giving someone a voice. And so that was kind of the start. And you know, equation of state, you know, after all of those projects, we worked with women, we did livelihood project. I mean, very unsuccessful projects as well, you know. We made a lot of mistakes, but I think equation of state is kind of summarizing a lot of these issues of, you know, we're talking about other things, like we're talking about who owns the island, who owns the land, who owns the sea, where are we, how do you say, when we talk about fisher folks and coastal communities, and they're all being moved away from the shore now, and they're being moved inland, it's also because of safety after Typhoon Yolanda, but then there's also the issue of they lose their culture and they lose their land. And all the coastal areas are privatized, especially in Bantayan Island. It's becoming a tourist destination and everybody wants to set up a resort. And so moving these people is good for a lot of people. So, you know, I've started looking at these kinds of, you know, these connections and feeling very frustrated for a long time because you feel quite helpless, you know, when it comes to, you know, even the, you know, something, I mean, I started obsessing with the mangroves and just being clueless in a way because after Yolanda there was a lot of replanting and planting of mangroves and then realizing also that, you know, a lot of companies want to invest in mangrove planting because, you know, of the carbon that they hold and that they're only planting one kind and, you know, that there's actually no, that it's not about, that it's about the action of planting but not looking at the long term and saying, are we planting the right kind of mangroves? Are we doing it in the right areas? You know, and also another thing though, after all the years of you know, working in Bantayan, working with my friends and family actually, I also want to kind of say that, you know, there's this with the sea level rising, but many people are very afraid, but we were even talking about it yesterday again, you know, saying, in Bantayan it doesn't feel like people are afraid of the sea like that, you know, because they know the sea. It's not that kind of a threat. I mean, land is disappearing, but it's not like, I'm half Dutch, and if I go back to Holland, the Dutch are really fighting the ocean, you know, that's been their mission for, you know, well, anyways, but it's a different attitude. And so I think if we're going to move into the future, I think we need to also listen to the people that really are connected to the sea and know the sea. And that's why I think maybe I will pass now, and then we're just going to do, if I'm forgetting something, we're just going to pass the microphone. But maybe you can continue maka-explain ka lang sa inyo na trabaho sa diba?
So, kaya ba naman, alam niyo naman name ko, Roberth Fuentes. So, since nalaman ko yung mga trabaho niya, so, parang gusto ko rin makatulong sa community. Kasi, parang pinapasa na yung virus na, good virus na, Pero, tama rin talaga yung pag-iisip. Kasi pag hindi ko alam yung katulad ng mga art world na to, siguro isa lang akong empleyado sa mall, nagwawalis na nagmamap ng floor, na yun lang, para makasurvive. Pero ngayon, nang nalaman ko na yung dagat is free, you can dive, you can hunting a fish, and then you can cook, you can eat. So, nalaman ko yung importansya ng natural resources natin, yung lalo na yung sa dagat, kasi yun yung nagpagbigay.
Yung taan mo yun kasi background mo.
Kasi yung family ko, fisherman din. So, nag-ano ko ng idea kasi palaging sa social media yung mga plastic, matagal na yung issue na yun kasi hanggang ngayon hindi pa rin. Naibigay ko lang na gumagawa ko ng video art about plastic. So, ginagamit ko yung camera as a tool, tapos yung katawan ko para maka-share ng story about sa plastic. Kasi, yung kinakain natin, kung kumakain din ng plastic sa atin din pupunta, di ba? So, yun yung mga plastic nakasabit sa buong katawan ko kasi tao, pabalik rin sa atin. So, ganun lang yung problem. Idea ng ginawa kong art. At so, yun lang yung gusto kong ihatid sa, hindi lang sa Bantayan Island, kundi sa buong mundo kasi connected tayo di ba?
Pero may challenge natin.
Oo.
Di ba?
Ang challenge lang kasi okay, pag nakita nila, okay, hindi ko naman kayang linisin lahat ng dagat. Kung may power. So, yun lang yung the way of thinking lang sa isang obra para ma-aware sila, kayo or yung ibang tao din. So, ngayon, struggling din ako sa trabaho ko kasi ang hirap para sustainable sa sarili mo, sa pamilya mo. Kaya kahit anong trabaho sa Bantayan Island, pinapasok ko yun din na maraming natutunan ko sa mga NGO, yung mga community organizing, yung mga meeting, ganito pala. Tapos yung din sa government, kasi nung panahon na nagsasayaw pa kami, sariling pera lang namin pag nanalo kami sa contest, sariling pera lang namin para makagawa ng costume, ganon. So ngayon parang konektado na ito kasi government, di ba? Kapag may idea ka, may mga gusto kang gawin, so yun lang yung hirap kasi basta political parang ayaw mo ng sa political, pero ang yung art hindi talaga mag-work pag artist lang. So dapat yung lahat community, kasi iwan ko ba kung community ba yung tawag doon sa amin, kasi kapag community lahat ng tao unity, di ba? Pero sa amin hindi, ang hirap
Ina siya.
ang hirap.
Ina nga topic na ayaw nga, Mario, ikaw ang explain ko. Ano ang sitwasyon dito sa atin ba? Diba? Mag-translate. Diba?
Ikaw lang yung basta.
Hindi ako marunong salita ng Tagalog. Roziah lang. Ay, bantayan naman ako. Kaningan to sa mua, kaning kuan, magtugod o grupo, kaning si Sir, dito ni siya sa mua. Yan, nag-agni siya sa mua, nga patukuron ni grupo para sa among kabuhayan. Ang sulti na ko sa iya, nga, Sir, murag kapoy kayo sige kong pundok mga tao, anaman ako kawa.
So, kadalag mag-translate ako.
Ya, karon.
Kaya na yun kay mag-translate.
Di na maayo nga.
Kunin sa kaya
Translate ako.
hindi matingog.
Okay, so Mario is explaining that where he's from. It's Manonghal has been there and he's seen and he's talked to the people from his area that about organizing, di ba? But he's sige, continue lang. So,
Ilan, among gikuan, giingnan ako si Sir nga, Sir, murag maglisod mga pagkuan, advice sa mga kaning tao, mga tukod ni grupo o kapunungan.
It's very hard to organize us and to create an organized group in our area.
Na mingon si Sir sa ako nga, silang agnihan na sila, kay mubalik ko nga rin sa inyo ha, basi pa malukmay ang ilang mga kaisipan. Ya, pagbalik niya, yapon akong kuwan siya, kay kaning huwag mag-isip kuwan ng mga tao.
So Hal came to visit and we had a conversation about it, and I was telling him that it's really impossible to get us united in this, it's called the Chinese compound in Manila. And so when Manonghal left, he said, well, I'll be back, and then, just talk to everyone and explain to them the importance of working together. And so, pagbalik niya,
mingon na siya nga, og dili mo makapundok mo, basta mag-abot lang ko sa inyo ha, nga magkapundok mo. Di ama ko kanunay, anda mo tagana pagtabang ninyo. Kung saan ako pagtabang ninyo, kung dili mo, mutabang po na ako. Muna yung sulti sa kuha.
kung hindi ka mamutamang sa iyong kabal mo, hindi ka mo ganang
Mato nga, ingano, sa iluwala ko siya, kay mauragit na nga mong nakuha na yun.
Pero nga naman.
Pero wako wasing gano'n niya mabalhin ang among huna, kaming tulo ka tao, wa na mabalhin ang among huna kay nga magtugod yung may grupo nga para makatabang sa among kalisod.
So he was explaining that Manonghal was explaining that if you guys are ready for it, or if you would like me to, because Manonghal is a community organizer, if you want me to give advice or if you want me to work with you, you as a community have to explain or give your needs or say that you need. I'm so bad at translating. Put in a translation. You as a community need to want to work together and want to have change, no? Dayon.
Kaya ang among problema sa dagat nga nasa mua, ang dagat ang maging problema na mo.
The sea is really our problem in our area.
Dagat ang problema. Kaya sa dagat naman may mukuha o para pagkaon na mo sa
The
matapusa.
sea is really the source of where we get our food from.
Yeah. Ako, 25 anyos ako nga nagkuha sa dagat hasta nag-agi ko balda.
I've been working on sea for 25 years, and I've also been through banda, English. I've also gone through the bends.
Paralyzed ko. na-paralyze ko sa gumikan sa kanang pagpangita na mong huka-huka diving. Muna nga,
That's what they call
nibuwag,
huka-huka diving. Nano ka lang?
nibuwag ako sing dagat. Diyan lang ako sa takas nagkuhan. Ang pagpangita na po nako kanang kapitan ko sa lansa. Ya, 18 ka tuig.
Ano yan? Mag-translate ako. Nag-ano, nag-25 ka tuig, nag-kuan, kapitan.
Oh.
Dili, o 18 ka tuig, di ba?
18 ka tuig.
18 years captain of lancha. What's the translation? Yeah, it's a big ferry boat. Dili siya ferry, di ba? It's a motorized boat. Oh. Dahil,
Awayan, pagka-lampo sa akong bata sa pagkasiman, gipaulong ko niya pagpa-kapitan sa bangka.
his son just recently, 3 months, is working on board as an international seafarer. So his son has now asked him to stop working.
Iurong lang ko pagka-kapitan kay si anong pa sa akong bata nga di na nimo kaya labang-labang dagat.
You can't work at sea anymore. You're getting too old.
Wala nga, kani si May, maula na yung nagtapang sa mua. Diya sa Madidiyos na makakatubang din sa inyo ha. Tungod sa among problema nga to sa Bantayan Island.
Okay, so I'm so bad at translating. So Mayet, that's me, has been the one who has helped us to face all of you to talk about the issues that we have on the island.
Nagpasalamat ako sa
Kaya lang siya mga subong sa mga istorya. Tumaaw mo ganun sinabira.
dili na
Istorya lang yan.
kamao si Sir Al.
Wa pa man nagtabang. Ato lang kayo yung istorya. Ay, dili ini mga istorya.
Mo lagi tungod sa aton
I'm telling him, you don't have to be here to sit and say thank you. We haven't done anything yet. So let's just focus now. That's what I'm saying. Dili man. Nano ang sitwasyon dito nga, dili man magkahiusa.
tungod sa mga bisyo sa tao kulong mga batanon na may mga bisyo mga batanon ron nga di nato masaktan na ay mga batanon nga makasabot sa atong paagi na ay batanon nga makasabot sa atong paagi ang ilahon lang.
So there's also the new generation have the young people now have new ways or other ways, or the bisyo. Bisyo is like habits, bad habits nowadays, vices.
Mga kanang wagin na nakakuha sa amon nagtukod og kuan diha asosasyon na ay asosasyon mo to diha sa mua pero nabungkag ang ilang asosasyon gumikan kay wa magkahiusa.
We used to have an association. We used to have a group in our area, but it hasn't worked out. It's not sustained.
Para nga wala lang kami mo kuan lang mo padayon sa
Pero Cho, i-explain daw nano ang paagi nga panagat diha sa ato mga subong sinaanay.
ang panagat diya sa atua kanang compressor. Compressor diving ang diya sa kanina
Mainly
hoka diving.
the area that the
English.
type of fishing is compressor diving.
Oh,
Nanong gikuha sa compressor?
mga shell,
It's all shells. It is scallop.
Scallop.
English
ang
name.
litog na
Litog is another. It's all mostly for export, diba?
fish,
Oh.
fishing, fish, fish, anak. Tanang mga kuan makuha sa kuan compressor among gikuha ang mahalin. Ang di mahalin kanang idili labi na paniro wa miya ng kanang illegal fishing wa miya na.
Wala na.
Kanang kuan
Wala
kanang
nag-abusado,
sayanay.
ano?
Ha?
Wala nag-abusado.
Wala.
Mm.
Ako ilang pa kuan ana diya sa Maridios nga di gid pasudlan.
Mm.
Pero naay magbantay sa mua diha nga mo dawat og kwarta. Dili
There's
mo
no
na-
more illegal fishing in our area, but there are still people that receive money. How do you say? Getting corruption. Corrupt, di ba?
Korupsyon. Ang mayor namo wa gyud makakuan. Wala makabanat kay adlok lagi nga makuan sa mga tao.
Maayo siguro nga, so the mayor in our area, is not doing anything about this. So, actually, I mean, it's hard to explain, but basically, our Bantayan Island is not a tiny, small island. It's a large island of 3 municipalities, and it's more than 120,000 people. And so, the area that I'm from is Madaldejos. It's the northern tip, and this is a big fishing ground. But basically, the huge problem there is that it's fishermen from different areas because there are many islands around. And so they live on the shore together, but they're doing different kinds of fishing. And there's a lot of compressor diving, which is very dangerous. And basically, we have a problem that our leaders are earning from the fishing industry. So they are either the biggest buyers or they own the boats. So just summarizing it to give a kind of picture, because Mario, of course, is really from the area. So I'll try to do a more distant explanation. Diba? Ang concept natin, nag-explain kita, pero saan mag-istorya ito maybe now, you can kind of do a more bird's eye view, because you were the kind of, in a way, not an outsider, but you returned to Bantayan Island after many years, because we found each other. This is my long-lost cousin. We found each other because of Viva XCon. I had a roommate from Cebu, the UP Fine Arts teacher, and I was talking about all the things that we were working on in Bantayan. She said, I have this really good friend of mine that works with marine protected areas, and he works for an NGO working with fisher folks. And then she called him immediately, and then she says, I have my friend here, Martha, who's from Manila, Bantayan Island. And then, well, she mentioned my last name, and then he says, well, that might be family because I'm Atienza. Anyway, so that's when Hal returned to Bantayan, because he used to go there as a child because his father grew up on Bantayan. So anyway, so then he didn't have any more choice because, he couldn't get away from family and all of us saying, hey, we really need some help here. And so I think from his 20 years of being a community organizer, I think he can also give an interesting perspective of the area. Diba?
Good afternoon. My name is Haley Atienza. I'm currently involved in an NGO, maybe for about more than 25 years. I'm working now with PhilDRA as the regional coordinator. PhilDRA stands for Philippine Partnership for the Development of Human Resources in Rural Areas. It's a long acronym. It's a national network of 56 NGOs in the Philippines. And concurrently, I'm involved with Pakisama, if you're familiar. It's a national confederation of farmers and fisher folks in the Philippines doing advocacy to protect the rights and issues of the farmers and fisher folks. Now, suddenly I'm involved with community arts and environment. But I've seen a very important role of development work in this kind of field. But first, let me ask, who among you here have gone to Bantayan Island? Can I see some hands? Only one? Okay, only one. You should visit the island. It's a very beautiful place. But my best childhood memory is in Bantayan. We used to frequently visit Bantayan every summer. That's April and May. And when we come back to Cebu, I'm getting the dark tan, the skin, because of the very beautiful beaches. You can do island hopping anywhere. But when I met Martha, because of my work, we need to do expansion work in the Visayas. We identified Bantayan Island as one of our expansion sites. So I went on scoping work in Bantayan. I visited 4 organizations, and one of them is the Chinese compound. After 1 year, I only had 1 organization I brought to Pakisama as member in our national federation because the 3 others are not interested. And which brings me to reflect, why? Why are people not interested to help themselves? Because they're used to have this concept of dole-outs. You know, Bantayan is frequently visited by typhoon. And every time there's typhoon speech, the biggest one was Yolanda. There's a lot of post-Yolanda reflection wherein it created a lot of problems in the island. One, it created dependency from big donors. Second, when big donors come in, or even international NGOs doing development work, they tend to give dole-outs such that organizing has become obsolete. They right away implement projects, and big projects, and there's a lot of money being involved and a lot of money being wasted in Bantayan Island. Which brings me to reflect, I should go back to Bantayan and start from where the people are. And this is why I challenged the group, but unfortunately I can only do so much. If we don't want to be organized, Keber, I don't care. Because we are only interested to work with groups who are interested to help themselves. Otherwise, I need to find another group.
That's
So now,
interesting, no? Why? No? Why so?
That's why my reflection was, in fact, there was one at the Maba. When I asked them, are you interested to organize yourselves? Are you interested to help yourselves so I can help you? And then they started to talk about money. And then you will discover that their organization was not sustained because of financial opportunities and issues. So,
What about Chinese compound?
and the Chinese compound, I was very challenged in that group because they are about 200 household members, unorganized, and they're faced with different issues that they are not even, they have not even realized that they should confront all these issues. One, land tenure. They don't own the place. Second, there's garbage all around. Third, there's overfishing. Fourth, there is culture about dependency with government and donors. And yet, the government can only do so much because if you're not organized, you cannot get any basic services, especially for the kids. No? That's why I could have planned out things for Bantayan, but we need to sustain. So we started with BAFA, it's a women's group, and now we're doing savings mobilization. So I told them, I come here not as your savior, you need to help yourselves. You need to start up your funds. Do savings mobilization. By the time you have enough funds, we will double it. Then let's create to start a program. That means you have your own stake. If you lose your 10,000 pesos, that's your money, not ours. So who's not losing it? You, if you don't sustain your efforts. Okay.
It was interesting when we started in 2010. We were just doing video. Oh yeah, okay, 1 minute. Okay, we were doing projections. We were filming people working on the island, working at sea. We were coming together and looking at the images, and we were having conversations about what was happening in our community. But after Yolanda, it was really difficult to even get people together to just to even just get together because the attitude completely changed after Yolanda of that kind of helping each other, being there for your neighbor. So it's been really challenging. Like post Yolanda, working on the island has been quite challenging that way. But I'm not hopeless.
Sa akin lang experience kasi maraming mga kumukuha ng mga video para sa documentation about bigyan ng mga relief goods. So sa akin lang din, parang mayroong negative din na palagi nagdidikay sila, bigay. Parang ang tao hindi na work sa kanilang sariling pamumuhay. Kasi ang ano lang nila, hingi na lang. Kasi nung pumunta ako ng mga community para mag-take ng picture, dito na naman, baka may pamimigay. Ano, what? Siguro mayroon ganyan din siguro na negative na nakita ko sa mga pumupunta ng mga organization na nabibigyan ng mga fund.
I also like to bring forth one very important point because Bantayan is a very famous tourist site, like the Sugar Beach, the Santa Fe, very white sand. But I'm shocked to know that Bantayan is identified as a protected area, but now they try to lift that resolution, and now Bantayan would become like Boracay. So there's big establishments starting to put up there. And what happens now to Bantayan Island? The carrying capacity of that small island, especially garbage management, solid waste management. There's a problem they also problem on potable water and farmland. If you see their agriculture, all dried up. And how much more? And the sea level rise.
Beach property.
Yes, and I've seen this exhibit about mangrove. You will see part of that island, a mangrove area converted into residential. I wonder why that was awarded with ECC.
At ang presyo ng mga isda, shell, lahat tumataas na kasi tourist price na siya eh. Yung mga ordinary people hindi na makabili. So, yun rin yung problema ng sa isla namin.
I think, so our time is up. I hope that then after Ilan, we can have more dialogue today. Yeah, sorry about taking it. Yeah?
So let's give them a round of applause. So Ilan is an artist who works mostly with photography and multimedia, and she has moved into doing community projects after she moved back to her home, which is in Kota Kinabalu. So if you've not been to Kota Kinabalu, I encourage you to go and visit because it is probably the most beautiful sunset I've ever seen. And it's a magical place, and I'm so happy that Ilan has moved there from KL because it has incredibly enriched her practice as well as everybody who's come into contact with her. So this is Omar from Tawi-Tawi and Kak Roziah.
Hi everyone, thanks Isa. Thank you Silverlens for having us here today and also for the show, and to Martha for playing with me and being into the things that you're into. And it's so nice to have a peer and a comrade and talk in half sentences.
Yes.
I really appreciate that. And I'm so glad that Omarjan can be with us today from Bantayan Island in Tawi-Tawi, and Kak Roziah from Pulau Omadal, Semporna, Sabah side of the Sulu Sea. Yes, so as Martha was saying, I've moved back very recently to Sabah. The earlier black and white pictures were actually from my Kadazan grandmother. And these were pictures that I took in the south of the Tawi-Tawi chain. It's called Tun Sakaran Marine Park. This is Semporna. And that was in 2007. And it was the first time I came across some of these depot. They were the banig there for the depot mat. And that was 2000. That's a long time ago. And I fell in love with these mats, these depot banig. But I got carried away with life in KL, but it was always in my mind. And then I moved back to Sabah because I got sick. And I realized that sometimes your body tells you that you're in the wrong environment and you need to move back to a different environment, which is what I did. And best decision I ever made. And then I've always been a political creature. But what happened when I moved back home, there was self-reflection, and I was looking at my community that was immediately around me, and I was trying to find my place back home after being away for 24 years, something like that. So I found, this is the sort of background of how I got into maths and why maths, right? And then the political scenario I moved back end of 2016. So there's a lot of historic conflict in Sabah between land people and sea people. So the land indigenous, the sea indigenous, there's been long centuries of animosity, and this continues to this day. And on top of that, we have our difficult relationship with federal Malaysia, with Kuala Lumpur. So there were these different kinds of communities and different kinds of relationships. And I going through sort of my life history, I realized that Sabah can only become settled when the land people and the sea people speak together or come together, not necessarily the same voice, but are somehow together. And then I was thinking about these mats that I saw in Sulu, and I was thinking about my grandmother's mats. So my grandmother, who is Kadazan, used to weave bundusan mats. And then I realized that my grandmother passed away in the mid-90s. I realized I'd never seen a bundusan plant, and I didn't know what it looked like. And then I couldn't find the plant anywhere. I think the plant's gone extinct. And then I couldn't find a weaver who still weaves with bundusan. And this was within my lifetime, because I remember my grandmother doing these weaves. So then I really started thinking about how these mats are something. And then I realized that a mat is architectural space. Across we call Nusantara, the Southeast Asian archipelago, as well as the Asian mainland, Southeast Asia, a mat is an architectural space that gets unrolled for something, for ritual, for celebration, for domestic chores, for sleeping, for playing, all kinds of things. So then I was thinking about how this mat can represent these ideas of people speaking to each other or gathering and finding solutions through conversations to a lot of the big issues that were in the news, of starting with these mats. And then I went to, and I've always loved the Sulu Sea area. I mean, my Sulu Stories was made in 2005, which you may have seen here. So then I went to the Bajau Maritime Conference. I met Omarjan there, and I met Kak Roziah there. This is 2017, 2018, something like that. And that's when I started meeting the weavers and talking about what the mats were to them and things like that. And we started on these projects. So, and then simultaneously I got this commission from the National Gallery Singapore to do a foyer work for the foyer of the National Gallery Singapore, which is a huge museum that is positioning itself to be the hub of sort of Southeast Asian art in terms of a museum, modern museum, and some contemporary. And I was thinking a lot of that museum, as you walk through the galleries, it takes you a lot of galleries before you see work from here made by us. There's a hell of a lot of work in those, in the history of our art, which is other people telling us what we look like and who we are. And then, so for me to get an invite to do the foyer, I needed to bring the people of Southeast Asia to the foyer. Before you enter the history of colonial histories and things like that, you must first be greeted by, in my mind, by the local peoples of Southeast Asia, which to me is represented by the mat because it's shared by everybody, and it's architectural, and it's an invitation to gather and to share. So that's where I thought, okay, I'm going to make a mat for NGS. But the first work that I worked on, I'm showing that work here because it was so relevant to how I started. But at the same time, the very, very first test we made when I was working with Kak Roziah is the bottom row second to last. It's a picture of it here. And that was the very first project that Kak Roziah and I worked on together, to ask her whether I wanted to see, because I'm not used to working with community. I work like a lot of artists alone a lot of the time. So I'm learning how to work with community. And Kak Roziah has been amazing. But it's also a learning process for her, it's a learning process for me. And the more we work together, the more the work changes and the community starts coming in. So with the Tikar Major, there's two groups that I was working with. The coastal Pulau Omadal with Kak Roziah and the community there, and these bamboo works which are from the interior part of the most northern part of Borneo, in an area, it's a district called Keningau. So the weaving style and the materials are different. I'm jumping all over a bit, sorry, if that makes sense. Yeah, so then it became a process of exploring stuff, but as we were making the Tikar Major, it became clearer and clearer to me that there's different kinds of knowledge in our visual art history, our aesthetics, as well as our politics of power and how we live in our life, where our knowledge comes from. And the depo, in the Sama language of these mats, the Banek, also called depo, carry with it a lot of heritage and a lot of knowledge that is often also shared through the women folk predominantly, and learned through the women folk, but it contains much knowledge. And then the table is what I think of as a kind of contemporary knowledge, but it's like a colonial patriarchal power that is imposed on traditional knowledge. So what I mean by that, even in the words, Tikar, Depo, Banek, all has different local names for this mat. Mesa in Tagalog comes directly from the Portuguese and the Spanish. The table is, even in Malay, it's called meja, mesa. It comes from mesa. So it's about an imposition of power over other people. So that's why the table, and the table is reoccurring in a lot of my work. As we were going, so initially I was giving Kak Roziah and the team the silhouettes of these tables, and they were coming up with all local designs that from the community. And then by the end of the project, her daughters were helping us with a lot of the weaving. They started documenting the tables on the island, the teacher's table, the school table, and that brings with it another kind of power, a power about education, about art history. And most of the women that I work with on Pulau Omadal are stateless. So they're not Malaysian, they're not Filipino, they're not Indonesian. So there's this kind of patriarchal state power represented by the table as well, that's imposing on millennia-old traditions, cultures, peoples. It blends in, it is an imposition, all kinds of relationships happen, but it's different knowledge systems, different ways of communities working together. Kak Roziah, what shall I? So with the working on the why Kak Roziah, I love working so much with Kak Roziah is that I want to introduce Kak Roziah. Kak Roziah is from Pulau Omadal, which is an island in the Sulu Sea off a big town called Semporna, which is the sort of the main district town on the southeast side of Sabah that borders with the Filipino border and the Tawi-Tawi chain of islands where Omarjan is from. And she's been running the Wako Women's Organization, where she organizes women. You're talking about people wanting to be organized or not be organized really resonates with the community in Omadal as well. And the women of Pulau Omadal are really organized. The men less so, kan? Yeah. Macam But the women are super organized, and WWF Malaysia figured out that they were so organized. So they now also work with WWF Malaysia on turtle conservation. Apa lagi dengan WWF? Kak Roziah has lost her voice yesterday. Boleh cakap sedikit tentang kerja dengan WWF tentang turtle environment?
Hi, sorry, my voice is not clear. So I work in WWF Malaysia as the important is the marine conservation, like the turtle, and also help community about the alternative livelihood and support and giving challenges. Now, the marine conservation is a very important challenges to help community. So the WWF Malaysia to me is very good because in Omadal Islands, community women's group is that find understand about the marine conservation, like especially turtle, and also help community because Omadal Islands is the two community, one local community and one community. Local community is not having certificate. Is from Bajau Laut, and local and community is one IC or any kind certificate.
I'll explain a bit what she means. So on Pulau Omadal, there's two main communities. The Bajau Tempatan, which have Malaysian identity cards, and it's a very, very old island land-based community. They have century-old cemetery, they're very old cemetery. And then you have this semi-nomadic community of Sama Bajau Laut that don't have paper identity. So there are two main communities on this island. Yeah? And then when she was talking about the sea conservation, what a lot of the women folk, there's three main areas that they do conservation. It's turtle conservation, marine conservation in general, things like the issue of plastics, stuff like that, and also your plantation. They're planting their raw materials. So one very important part of this project that is part of why we do what we're doing is when the women have stopped weaving. Actually, there weren't many women weaving anymore. So through Kak Roziah, the women's organization, and then also the women's organization are Malaysian, but there's two communities there. So there's the Malaysian community and the stateless community. The women's group have been trying to revive handicrafts, and they've been doing a really good job of it. And then the stateless community had more or less stopped weaving because they can't make an income from it. The amount of time you have to put into weaving and the returns that you get are too low that it's not worth their time. So they go fishing with their husbands. We have a massive Chinese tourist population, so they're fishing exotic seafood for this insatiable Chinese tourist market. So what we're trying to do with reviving the handicrafts there is that the women stop going to sea with their husbands, they stay at home, and they're teaching future generations, their children, about weaving and about heritage. And at the same time, they're trying to stop and slow down the fishing in the area so that there's a chance for the fish to regenerate. And also they're setting up what's called 5 minutes. Oh my God. 5 minutes for all three of us? Or just me? Okay, yeah. And then I pass to them. And also they've started growing their own raw materials, which is the other problem. So we're doing replanting with the pandanus and the mangkuang along the coastal lines. So all the materials that are used in the handicraft are planted by themselves in order to be sustainable. And then now we're trying to generate real sustainable income through the knowledge from the communities themselves, the skills from the community, and also to pass down to their children. Kak Roziah, are we playing Kak Roziah's? Kak Roziah is amazing because she's also a documentary filmmaker. Like with Martha Robert, Roziah, there's a group in Sabah that is called the Suara Community Filmmaking, where they train rural communities in tools of documentary making. So it's sound recording, it's camera work, it's editing, and then so Kak Roziah has been part of that, and we're about to show her video, I think. Yeah. And can you talk about, boleh cakap tentang documentary, tentang project ini, kalau apa-apa yang suka, tidak suka, apa-apa isu, kalau bahasa pun boleh atau English pun boleh.
So this is story the video, because if you have known, Malaysia is the one coral triangle initiative in peace, food security. So that's why I can doing this video, and I can see to the audience, this video is very important to the another place also.
It's got subtitles, so you can talk like this. Susah untuk cakap.
This is my friends.
Apa you nak saya tolong cakap? I'm going to try and help her talk because I feel so bad about her throat. It's painful. Apa you nak? Okay, that's Makcik Bilong. She's working on one of the Tika major mats here. So this is the Sama de Laut community. So the houses that are on the sea are one community, and then the houses on the land are another community. So they live most of the time at sea on their houseboats. So they'll cook on the boat, sleep on the boat. There's Kak Sana. She's a master weaver. She's amazing. This is Kak Roziah and her house. So her house is like, Kak Roziah cooks amazing food. And I think she's a bit of a center, where she's a community leader. But because she's a woman, she's not the ketua kampung, the head of the kampung, which is a man, which is her relative. But she really is the head of this island, I think, personally. So her house is quite a center, and her cooking, her coffee, life evolves a lot around that. This is her at the Pulau Omadal Persatuan Wanita, the women's organization. So these women are the women from the organization who are trying to revive craft as a sustainable livelihood, especially for women. These are the kinds of crafts that they make, which are sold in Sabah and also in West Malaysia. This is the pandanus that they plant. So they have their own sustainable pandanus. Yeah, these are their products that that they produce, and then.
And also my work is promote to the eco-tourists to come visit in my islands and see my product, because 10% profit from here is to go to marine conservation.
Yeah. So 10% of their income from their handicraft sales goes to turtle conservation and conservation work to cover the cost of their turtle.
Petrol or community.
The petrol to do the boat checks for around the island to see if any turtle laid eggs. So they're not only making income for the women, but they set aside income to do conservation work. The women have, because they're actually got more work than, we're pulling in more and more women, they've actually stopped going to sea and they've stopped fishing for the tourist market, which for us is fantastic because it's allowing the marine life to regenerate. Yeah. So berapa orang sekarang dengan Kak?
Sekarang 32.
She's got 32 women weaving with her. And yeah, it's amazing. 32 seahorses live another day. I love seahorses. And they're teaching anak-anak.
Yeah.
Oh, Kak Roziah also runs a school. Talk about your school.
And I also run to school, help the community, non-event certificate, and my NGO from Indonesia, Asia, and from Kuala Lumpur, willing I can help to this children, and I can also arrange the teacher to the giving teaching for me there.
Yeah, it's a school for stateless kids, and they get funding from various places. But she runs the school. The school's directly next to her house. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, our dream is to start an art school together because the kids don't like going to school actually. So we thought we'll teach subjects via art. Yeah, there's a lot of counting and maths and making a man, right? Apa lagi yang nak cakap tentang apa? Documentary, school, Wapo, turtles. Apa?
And also I can Wapo is now sharing to Japan for the maybe 5-7 to last years.
They were on a trip to Japan to promote their products. After we started doing our projects together, we showed at NGS. Actually, during the opening while I was here, I got a message from Kak Roziah that Craft Tangan Malaysia is starting to take the stateless people's products, which is amazing. It's the first time that Malaysian Handicrafts, a big organization that oversees the whole country, for the first time ever is taking product from stateless people. Because normally they only take from Malaysians. It's so ridiculous. Yeah. That's a big achievement. That they have that income. So now they're super busy because they got orders up the... And the other thing that started happening, because we also sell, we have a thing called ketamu. You want to talk about Ketamu. Ketamu is the local word for market. And it's very important in Sabah sort of social political history. Because this local market, historically, is where the jungle people would meet the river people, would meet the plains people, would meet the sea people. They barter, they trade, they fall in love, they fight. It all happens at the Tamu, right? So I'm part of a group in KK that started a tamu, a market, a sustainable, politically aware, conscious market. So they were the biggest star of the first Ketamu, and they were selling their mats, beautiful, beautiful pieces. You want to talk about that, Papa? Okay. So the next one is 15th and 16th of February, if you happen to be in KK. And also it's an opportunity for us to show KK people what they're doing. It's actually really, really hard in Kota Kinabalu, in KK, to find a depot from the Sama community, kan? Or Bajau mat. It's not easy to find. Yeah. And then, so, Omarjan, I was so excited Omarjan can come today. We met at the Bajau conference, but Omarjan has been promoting, we haven't worked directly on projects, but we have the same passion, I would say, to revive the arts within community for their sustainable, as a tool for sustainable incomes, to keep local knowledge, to I'm going to pass. Okay, Omarjan. This is Omarjan's video that he directed. Start again?
Yeah. Assalamualaikum. Magandang hapon po. Ako po si Omarjan Jahuran. I'm from Tawi-Tawi, from Bantayan Island. Bantayan, Tabawan sa It's in South Bian Municipality. I'll show you the video that I directed recently for the Bujang Tawi-Tawi, the pageant, para sa i-showcase the beauty of our islands. Tawi-Tawi is composed of 11 island municipalities. So this is like our entry, and I'm trying to convince our local government that what we have in our island is a very important cultural heritage that must be preserved, because our islands like the last frontier of Sama Bajau cultural heritage, and a lot of island municipalities in Tawi-Tawi are like applying the developmental works based from the Western concepts, and not taking consideration of our culture, our traditions. So yun po, and I'm trying to convince our local government chief executive, our mayor, if hindi lang po, not only tourism as in like the beaches, but also the cultural tourism, because yun po ang pinupunta dun sa Tawi-Tawi, is people want to experience what's in Tawi-Tawi, kasi there's a lot of negative image about Tawi-Tawi, medyo maraming gulo, there's a lot of Abu Sayyaf, in peace and order situation doon. So made this video, and at the same time I'm advocating for the preservation of our built heritage. Nakita niyo sa picture, sa video, the ancestral wooden houses there are like over 100 years old, and the houses, the langan or the wooden moss it was made without nails. So ano lang siya, tali. And there were two before, but now the other one, the other moss got funding from like a politician gustong i-develop, so they turned it into a concrete moss. So right now I'm trying to like race against time to save our cultural heritage, our built heritage, our traditions, our ritual systems, because if there are no laws established there, so naturally yung developmental work ng local government will prosper, and dahan-dahan kung nako-concrete lahat. So the beauty of the place slowly degrade, nawawala. So I'm trying to establish also the local arts and culture council, proposing to the mayor, and I passed and I authored an ordinance. Hopefully they will sponsor it. I authored an ordinance preserving our built heritage and our ritual systems and our traditions and our sacred spaces. Yung mga wooden porch, yung mga wooden pathways, footbridges that are connected to our rituals actually. And the younger generations, they have no idea about it anymore, because before our elders, our council of elders, when people got sick, they donate wood, blanco wood, to make the footbridges. So it's connected to our rituals. And then yearly we have this Kamboan, or a day of respecting our ancestors. It's like the Day of the Dead. but more of people from our island who are working now abroad or elsewhere. They come home just for that, and they all come together. It's like a social cohesion for the community, and they come home just to celebrate. But then after that, they go home and they don't care about the place anymore. But then they still hold on to the ritual. They still hold on to the tradition. So that's what I've been doing. And one more thing, I've been working also with our language, Sinama language. Sinama is the language of the Sama Bajau. We call it Sinama, and been involved in documenting the language in dictionary making. So we were able to produce an online Sinama dictionary. If you can go to Google Map, you can download it, like Google Play, you can download it. Just look for the Sinama dictionary app. And been doing a lot of writing, documenting, and two of my stories actually were published in CCP, Cultural Center of the Philippines, in 40th edition ng Ani Katutubo. Two children's stories about preserving our marine life. It's a fable. It's translated in Tagalog, and also taking care of our environment. So, yun po yung advocate ko. And recently, I met I-Lann in Semporna, Malaysia, where we have this international conference on Sama Bajau Maritime Affairs. And I submit a paper about the tepo, the panig. So, I submitted a paper, it's entitled Anong Tepo, the Sama Bajau Traditional Art of Mat Weaving. And I'm trying to claim that the tepo mat weaving is connected to the cultural identity of the Sama Bajau. Although a lot of other tribes are doing the mats. So, but this particular mat, the designs, the colors, it's part of our cultural identity. And that's where I met her and Kak Roziah, and then that's where I learned about her project, the biggest, the longest mat, the Tikar Garagaga. And then I'm so inspired by her, by the project. So I decided, I told our mayor if we can make a biggest tepo, biggest mat, because anyway our island is one of the famous mat making island in Tawi-Tawi. And if we can make it very big, then perhaps we can join register it to Guinness World Book of Records. So it's a shot in... Pero yun ba, gusto kong mangyari na makilala ang aming tribo, ang aming lugar, because we have still this ingenious way of doing quality tepo, the one that you saw in the video, yung lag roller. That lag roller, where the tepo is pressed, is actually part of the ritual system of the Sama Bajau tribes. It's not actually for mat, it's actually for sugar cane. We press yung sugar cane for the juice to come out, and then to as a sweetener for a ritual food called panyam. And then once it's the event is organized, it's actually a 3-day, 3-night of music and dancing, traditional dance, where we dance on top of the tepo. So it's all connected. Ritual system. Igal Tabawan, right? Because that's where I came from. So if we can make a big tepo, the size as this, called probably a gymnasium, and that's it. So yun pong pangarap ko dun, sana magawa. But then have to convince them because they're not into it because it's normal for them to see the table. It's not into it. Parang nawawala. It's getting lost. The kind of passion to weave tepo. And then, who cares about the tepo? So nawawala yung nila. And then just recently, like another project of DAR, nagkaroon sila ng project. It's the same idea, concept, project na ginagawa ng Omarjan Island. It's just that they are organized, while here in the Philippines, medyo mahirap i-organize, gaya ng sinabi ng taga Bantayan. It's hard to organize the people because they're used to dole-outs. They're used to like being given funds and in return, binibigay lang nila. So wala sa kanila, they don't have any idea anymore of the preserving the culture, preserving the tradition. As long as there's money involved, okay, that's it. So, ayun. So, hopefully, magawa natin ng paraan, at sama-sama tayo sa ginagawa. So, that's it.
I guess I wanted to start off the talk, this Q&A. I wanted to, I guess, hear from maybe one from each side. So the question is, if you can give us two concrete things that we can do, two realistic, concrete things that we can do as people who live in cities or as people who are here today.
Omarjan?
Siguro yung in-advocate ko is to recognize what we're trying to do there, recognize our efforts in preserving our cultural heritage although there are already, I think, agencies doing that, but then we don't have the connections yet. There are agencies now, government agencies doing that, like Historical Society, I think, like National Museum and ano pa, marami, NCCA. But then we don't have access to it because malayo kami. Our internet connection is not really that good, fluctuating. Our phone connections, and also yung accessibility namin sa transportation. Like our island is like 6 to 7 hours away from the airport in Tawi-Tawi. So yun yung infrastructure connections. If we can give recognition and help us document it and siguro pupunta doon at titingnan and yun lang po.
May Instagram account ka ba?
FB lang po.
Kailangan magkaroon ka ng Instagram.
Uberang Instagram ko.
Ano lang? Pang post lang. Pang share lang. Tag mo lang si Ana Labrador. Okay ka na.
Kakalat na yun.
Oo, kakalat na yun. So I guess it's information. It's dissemination of information.
I've got one thing to say. When you have handicrafts in front, buying handicrafts from people, don't ask for a discount.
Yes.
It's so annoying.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, for me, even this showing up here and having this conversation, or maybe afterwards, continuing the conversation, and hopefully just being aware of as the Philippines or our country and beyond our borders, being aware of that. That's really important for me.
Metaphorically, it's sharing the mat. So if you get, I've decided that it's not that I want to be at the table, I want to explode the table and bring the mat. So if you can share, the concept of being at the table, change it a bit to sharing the mat. How do we share the mat? So we gather, we share ritual, we share celebration.
It's not just
together.
you and them, or it's
And
us.
there's no hierarchy. We're all a little bit uncomfortable. You end up falling asleep because you lie down. But it equalizes and democratizes space for people to come together and share.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think most what we've done on Bantayan alone has been shared, you know. And I think it's a long process. I think doing this kind of work is a commitment, a lifetime commitment, and you know, I think we really.
So ano yung may tulong gagawin nila sa
Or anong magawa
anong magawa nila. So siguro pag pumunta sila, respect lang, then respect lang each other. Tapos aware sa mga ano sa lugar.
If we go to
Kasi ano din may connection tayo sa isa't isa. So ganun lang. Kung ano yung nangyayari din sa Manila, aabot din na yun ng Bantayan. So ganun lang. Kung ano nangyayari sa Bantayan, aabot din ng Manila. So, isa lang tayo. Isa lang yung earth natin. Ganun lang.
say something? There's a question.
Naalala ko na po I think NCC has a program called the School of Living Traditions. So, ako personally, and I would like to campaign for that sa aming lugar in order to preserve the mat weaving, the traditional dancing, and other arts and craft na pwede namin. Like even the grave art, grave markers namin na made of wood. So, preserve the School of Living Traditions.
I think you had a question.
I guess a comment, no? But I guess what we're trying to say in a way is that we should focus on the economic importance of preserving heritage, which means that by buying products that are locally made, then we can support certain communities, or by showing as responsible and socially responsible, environmentally responsible tourists, that when we go to a certain special place, that we will only buy and financially support activities of locals that will also seek to preserve what they have.
Yeah, I mean that's one. That's economic.
Yes, a lot of things, a lot of the problems are really economic. And like Tawi-Tawi, the reason why we all don't want to go there is because of the Abisaya. And the Abisaya problem is really an economic problem. I mean, they wouldn't resort to kidnapping people for ransom if they had proper jobs. And if there was like a bustling economy in Mindanao, not just in Tawi-Tawi, then people would have jobs and they wouldn't have to become bandits.
What worries me in Bantayan Island, when I knew that the declaration of Bantayan being a protected area, in fact, one of the key biodiversity area in the northern part of Sulu, is that it will create another set of problems, cultural, waste management. By cultural because, and in fact, peace and order. What worries me, because Bantayan, I grew up in Bantayan. I was not born in Bantayan, but I grew up my childhood every summer in Bantayan Island. There's this one tiny island called Tease Island. It's not a very famous island, but you could see a very serene water, small island, very clean. And when I went back 10 years ago, it was able to maintain that way. Why? Because it's not infested with so many tourists. But because of Bantayan now has lifted that declaration of being a wilderness area, business will people will put up more businesses there. But how can Bantayan itself manage that kind of development? No? We are not anti-development, but development within the context of being pro-people, pro-environment, not just pro-capitalists. And what worries me also in Bantayan, because of the peaceful culture in Bantayan Island, people were so hospitable, but because of the tourist flock that visited the place, suddenly they have this tendency of prices started to shoot up in terms of hotels, accommodation. Before you can stay in Bantayan almost free. It's very cheap doing business and enjoying your vacation in Bantayan Island. So that in itself worries me when what happens now to Bantayan. Shall it be able to sustain what Bantayan used to be, a paradise of beautiful beaches, beautiful people, and beautiful scenery?
Can I add on to that? One of the positives of the Abu Sayyaf is that the coral triangle of the Sulu Sea, which produces 70% of the world's coral species, is protected from Four Seasons Hotel and the like. Because the area is so beautiful. And even in recent years, since I've been going there in the mid-2000s to now, it's opening up really fast to tourism, and Palawan also, and Coron also. And it's changed, and it has a very, very fierce environmental impact on these really fragile ecosystems. Even feeding tourists has an environmental impact. There's not enough water. Water is a big issue on the island, and waste, and the way they treat children. Chinese tourists buy a bajau guide will throw sweets and chips into the sea, so naked kids would jump in so that they can get a photo of a naked bajau kid jumping in to retrieve sweet. Or then the stereotype image of a kid holding a handout for coins, right? That is a fallout of really inconsiderate and plain bad tourism that you don't want. But then you also have very healthy tourism where there's real exchange, sharing, knowledge. And that's a slower form of tourism though, that is not this, you're in for 2 nights, in and out. You know, things like the diving community is a community that I really respect, because they pay money, good money, and they're very, very conscious of the environment. They're very conscious of their own plastic waste. They often will take their own rubbish with them. Clearing rubbish from the islands is a massive problem. And a lot of the rubbish on the island is not from the island, huh? Is it the same?
It's coming up.
Yeah? It's not from your island, it's from the sea. So tourism is a really double-edged sword.
And when I went with you, when you took me around, you showed me Boston tourism. I mean, because it's so controlled.
Yeah.
You can tell a little bit about it, because I've been talking about this type of tourism.
About the Sipadan and, I mean, not the
our bear,
something.
yes. I mean, how he also deals with social media, and how he is bringing the truth.
You know, but I have to say, when Martha and I, we were being tourists, we didn't stop talking for 3 days. It was the most exhausting thing. But we had such a fun time. So we took it to Sandakan, which is north of where Kak Roziah is from. But it's where a lot of the jungle environmental work is doing. It's where the Rainforest Discovery Center is, where you can go and hug a 1,025-year-old tree. My favorite, 1,000-year-old tree.
Oh yeah, and we also walked around hugging about the tree.
Yeah. we been tree huggers. And then I introduced her to Wong, who's my friend who runs the sun bear sanctuary. He's a CNN hero, right? He's dedicated his life to sun bears. And it takes, I think, certain personalities like Wong, who is a force. You just cannot ignore him. He's so in your face. He's so passionate about sun bears. His entire life is sun bears. And he's so that, he's like, as you're talking to him, he breaks aside because he's making an Instagram video because he's just come across a snake. And he's telling you about the snake, right? I'm posting it to Instagram. So your comment earlier about Instagram is true. And what he makes you feel is you're so damn excited about this green tree snake, which is an ordinary green tree snake. But you get excited by nature and you want to be part of it somehow. And I think
how
that's
he's bringing tourists in and how he's, let's say, using the tourism was really interesting for me to see. How I understood is that, you go in as a tourist, but you can't just walk anywhere. They basically have designated pathways where you can see the sun bears from a distance, and even, well, that's not Wong's project, but the orangutan. And then, and so it's also very clear, or where the money is going, that, you are paying entrance, and so it's helping to conserve these animals and the place. And so, because I was quite very negative about tourism before going to Semporna, but at least in Sandakan I was able to look at it in a different way. If tourism can be controlled, it could be what you call ecotourism, which a lot of people are using in the wrong way, but I think it could be a way to support the animals, the wildlife, the communities. For me, it was just an eye-opener because I haven't seen that here. Because in Palawan, even when we went, when was that? Like 2 years ago, they had you could go see a tribe and a botanical garden, and then a tribe would perform, And it was just so painful to see this. It was just, I couldn't believe that was still happening now, So, anyways, yeah. I think it's good to see how they're doing it.
The Semporna Islands project, the Tun Sakaran Marine Park, when I first went there, it's closed to everybody. It's closed to tourism. You're not allowed to go because it's such a fragile marine the marine biology there is so fragile. Pulau Omadal is just on the border of this Sabah Parks area. So when I first went there, the only people there were Sabah Parks and the local people who lived there, Bajau and Sama Bajau, Sama Dalau, and they lived on those park islands. No visitors allowed. When I stayed there, I slept in the Sabah Park staff quarters. There was no homestays, no hotels, and I had a photo of it in my slide earlier. It's so beautiful, and things like your seaweed industry, which needs really clean water, is booming, and you're selling your seaweed to Japan and wherever. Then a few years ago, they opened it to tourism, and now you have cruise ships coming in, and the whole area. Sabah Parks, I think they're really, really struggling because they're under state directive as well. And Sabah really wants to push tourism it's a income from tourism goes straight to the state, whereas income from palm oil goes to federal. So we have all these kinds of economic structures as well. So timber and tourism are state income. So Sabah is really pushing tourism. So all these really incredible spaces are being opened up, but it's a catch-22 because you're losing precisely what's so beautiful. And meanwhile, the communities that are living there struggle with social factors like this objectification of people and stuff like that. Yeah. And the environmental damage. Yeah. I don't know if it's like that in Tawi-Tawi.
Parang ganun ba rin? It's almost the same. Except that one of our problems, like the politicians and this, not just tourism but the developmental work. Like for example, one tree there in our island is considered a 100 a century-old tree. And the people there consider it as a pandoga or a sign when they go out on the sea. Parang marker nila that like they already close home, they see. But then some politician cut the tree and then develop a housing project in the island without minding the culture of the people, that the people do not live on the land, the people live on the sea. So it should be a water village type of development like the Maldives. So ganun dapat. But then yung developmental work nila is more on land-based. So ganun, almost the same problem. There should be like a culture-based governance.
That's a good idea, culture-based governance. So in your Martha and Yee-Lann, so now that you've met each other and you've done this together, how do you think? I guess what can you take from each other's practices or each other's shows moving forward? Because you're both very, very. I guess you are people who learn on the fly. You know what you know, but you're constantly adding to this. You're constantly trying to connect people. And so, what do you think, Martha? What did you get from Yee-Lann, and Yee-Lann, what did you get from Martha?
So much. Well, I mean, I already learned from Yee-Lann when I went to visit her. But she has to come visit me also.
Yeah. Just tell me when and I'm there. I love the citizen science in your work, that it takes local technologies and you make it really contemporary and so relevant to a contemporary time, like your grandmother's lenses, but using local science and even this pulley system, because it is so clever, because the inventiveness that you see in communities, because they're constantly fixing and recycling stuff, right? Just for life, right? And it's not such a big leap. And you illustrate it in such a wonderful way of how creative and how much thinking there is through these community-derived science solutions. And then it becomes so incredibly cool and it's so contemporary in its form, precisely because of where its source is. So that's an aspect that I really take, and I love that you're not scared of putting live plants in an art gallery, which is quite audacious.
But it was so nice because she's not here, but Gladys, I've been working with her. But she's actually from Bacolod, but we met here through a project before. But she came to Bantayan, and then she was talking to her dad on the phone, and she said, her dad was like, "What are you doing there?" She said, we've got all these mangroves, and I'm just trying to we're just trying to figure out together how we're gonna get them to move up and down. And Dad was like on the video call, like, "Hi Martha, okay, good luck with that," And then I was saying to her, "Your dad's cool with that, because all of us." But I just want to add just one more thing. But I mean the nice thing about what I was thinking. Because when you go on the islands, and I'm sure also, your islands, that people are so innovative with what's there, So nothing's garbage. Actually, the best recycling is happening on the islands because nothing gets thrown away; it all gets reused. And so, I think, kind of like the challenge of pulling mangroves up and down. It wasn't about that. It's about how can we together figure out how something works, and then realize that we could apply that to other things. When we're talking about problems that we are facing, it means that we do have solutions. It's not just our knowledge of the sea, but also, the young people now, they know how to use the computers, they know how to use the internet. I really want people to believe
and understand that they have that capacity, you know? So, yeah, but now back to the question. I mean, I-Lann, my gosh, where do I start? What I learned from I-Lann? But I think, so much, but I mean, I think for you, first of all, you're very brave to tackle the banig.
I know.
I'm
so scared of saying banigs in Manila.
Banig is,
Manila is
everybody,
capital.
first of all, everybody has the banig history, and then to go for it, and then to work together with people that are specialized in the banig, and then for everybody to own it, and then to, how do you say, change its, not change its story, to use what the banig is and what it symbolizes, but to also bring it into another, give it another light, you know, and use it to start other kinds of conversations that maybe not everyone is used to working with the banig. And because I know that it's a difficult, you know, something that is used in households or something that people know.
It's not special, it's common.
Yeah, because people are like, why do you want to do so? I mean, I can imagine people saying, why do you want to do something, you know, with this? And we know how to do this. So I think that is the main thing that I appreciate in I-Lann's work. One. So I think, Kat, you wanted to say something?
Pero ikaw may banig para sa mga project, di ba?
Okay. Okay. So he's saying, actually we've been using banigs because when we do the screenings, we always use the banigs to sit down together because we want everyone to come together and be on the same level,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And be comfortable. So, but I never, you know what I mean? I saw the banig as that, and I think it's amazing how you bring the banig in such a different context.
It's so scary showing
Yeah.
banigs in Manila.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what the hell, you show banigs
There
in
she
a
comes.
farmland? Banig territory. Really intimidating.
It's part of a ritual.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of the rituals involved?
Yeah, it's a heritage.
I just want to about the banig, the map. We have two kinds of banig tempo in our place, our island. One is used for the ritual, and the other one, the colorful ones, are for weddings, dancing, sleeping, for what else? For praying also. We use the banig for dua salamat or communal prayer. And there's one particular banig that's required in our place that is so special. It should be a herringbone type of white banig, in white because we believe, we have this ancestral belief that our ancestors still live with us inside the longhouses, the ancestral houses that is so from time, it's a daily reality in our place that our ancestors are still with us, and we honor them by putting their beddings inside, still in the houses, and no one sleeps there except the ancestral spirits. And also they have their mga things nila doon sa baul. No? So we still have that kind of belief system, and slowly nawawala because of the disrespect of the younger generation brought about by the technological advancement, globalization, education that is not sensitive to culture sensitive like that. So slowly it's getting lost. So we're trying to revive it, trying to remind the newer generations to appreciate and realize that it's part of our cultural identity. That's who we are, and that's the banig. So and the process of making it also, so part of a system, ritual system, it's sacred because we're doing it, our grandmothers, our aunts are doing it, and when they're about to sleep and when they wake up, and they always say prayers also. And then prayers, they always say prayers to the banig. They speak to the banig. So all of that is part of our ritual system.
Omarjan, a potentially tricky question. Is there, how do you balance like an animist past that the Banig Depot comes from, or the animist traditions, with Islam? Because now Islam is a very dominant religion in our region. Is there a conflict? How do they fit together? Also, when you have an Islamic burial, the body is often wrapped in a plain mat.
Yeah, nowadays, because in the Islam that our ancestors knew is different from the Islamic tradition, the Islamic tradition before and the new Islamic culture now. It's actually more of a Arabic version of Islam, while the older Islam is like Asian Islam. So our ancestors, they didn't find any conflict before because they have this, we call this adat or local customs. So when the Islamic missionaries came in, so there's no conflict to the rituals that they have in our place. But then the new version of Islam, and they banned the ancestral reverence, in our place, and the practices. So instead of banig wrapping around the corpse when they die, they replace it with white cloth. So that's why in our place we were born in banig and we died in banig. We still have it.
Do you want to talk ada boleh dia ada konflik antara ada dengan
So, any questions from the audience? Questions, comments? Yes?
I have a comment. It's actually something that I relate to what you spoke about with the table, with the names, when you started talking about the names, and it just came to my mind because I come from East Africa, Kenya.
From where?
East Africa, in Kenya. And we call table mesa.
It's the same.
And by that is in Swahili, in my native language we call it meta. With a TH. Now, why do I bring this up? Swahili is an offshoot of Arabic and Bantu, my native language. So in the 15th, 16th centuries, when the Omani Arabs were circumventing the globe, they stopped in specific parts of the world and interacted with the locals. And so you have a culture, the Swahili culture, which is without the blood. And that's why there was a mix of Bantu and Arabic words. Now, yesterday I was speaking to people that are based in Sulu, because we're looking at a project in Sulu. And they told me that the coffee there is called kawa, right? Which also happens to be the name of coffee in Kenya. We call it kawa too. Which also happens to be the name of coffee in Oman. Kawa, right? And so it got me thinking of this connection of how we think that we're not connected, but we are connected. Because if you think about it, we all have different languages. We are almost about 50,000 miles on the other side of the world. But we all coffee the same name. We have this kind of match, that's not a name, but it's a match. the Arabs were not colonial, but they had a good influence because they were able to unite disparate people. Because you could find the same kind of conditions in Sulu, I don't know about Keningau, but I think it's the same. In the Java part of Indonesia, now I know that it's also the same in the parts of Malaysia. In Kenya, in the East African coast, in Mozambique, in the East African coast, in Tanzania, in Oman, in Oman, in Qatar, right? Even in Turkey. Right? So it kind of, opened up something that, yesterday I was quite, amused to know here the calling of power, right? And that now so the final thing that I also discovered is that when we cook our meals in Kenya, in the coastal part, because people use coconut, they break their coconut with something that they use in nature that is shaped like a horse, and they call it kabai or something. And in Kenya we call it busi, which is shaped like a goat. So you can think about, this is influence that we got pre-colonial, so this is a much higher influence. So which I think that was much more better, uniting the pre-Omani Arabic influence, which kind of unites the people even though they're far away, and more than the colonial influence. That was
Thank you for that. That reminds me a bit of Martha's work in here, in terms of, have you been seeing the work inside here? And then there's reverberations. So as you're talking about that, it would remind me of the action or movement, and then there's reverberations that continue, and in a way the sea being how people traveled in a corridor of the world, how it's all interrelated, and how the repercussion or the ripple effect or all these kinds of things reminds me of, in quite a literal sense. But yeah, and there's different kinds of power, yeah? There's an imposition power, and there's a power that's a lot more, where it's not imposed so much.
Any more questions or comments? Any questions for each other?
I got a question for Robert. With your gang, with your members in Bantayan, your friends, is there how has working with Martha and watching Martha work? Is there a new interest in what they can do with this idea of art? Is there, and do more people want to become artists, like amongst young people, like 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds? Do they think about it as something possible?
Siguro, kasi yung mga new generation gusto talaga matuto lalo sa art, sa science, pero ang kulang lang doon is yung opportunities. Kasi sa Manila maraming mga nag-aaral ng mga ganun, pero sa isla yung sa amin lang is yung experience lang na nakikita namin everyday. So para sa akin gusto talaga ng mga generation ng mga lack of opportunities ng mga if kayo may mga specialty kayo about science, importante science sa akin kasi yun yung nagsusustain ng isang lugar, lalo na sa isang maliit na island. Kasi nakikita ko na yung effect, yung problema about sa water crisis doon. Nung una, nag-iigib pa kami ng tubig sa balon, naiinom pa namin. Pero ngayon, hindi na. Dahil hindi na umiinom ng tao kasi alam nila madumi na. Tsaka yung na-effectuhan din yung pananim ng mga magsasaka. yun, food crisis na din kasi yung mga mais namin hindi na yung normal na mais na talagang tubong is bantayan talaga.
I'd like to connect because Robert mentioned about the different problems in the community. And exactly the same problem that challenged me to work in Bantayan. Because it's difficult for the organizer to go there and tell people, hey, this is your problem. You are faced with these different problems. But instead, I asked them, what do you think is your most important problem, even top 3? They could hardly identify it. You know why? Then I start to wonder, why? Because all they care about is income, livelihood, food on table, that's all. But when I started to get them more comfortable about telling me what is the biggest problem you faced in your community, in your surrounding, in your environment, then they start, oh, we could hardly plant our corn or rice because we don't have water. Then you follow up, why don't you have water? Because there's no rain. And what do you intend to do about it? Then they will say, nothing. But they forgot that governance in Bantayan, especially the role of the mayor and the legislators, very important. And that is where we, the NGO, should come in to fill in that gap for them to become empowered, socially aware about what's happening around them, and let them move to work on those issues. And until now, it has become a challenge for me when every time I go back to Bantayan. Like right now, there's so much overfishing because of illegal fishing, and there's so much problem about garbage. And if we were not doing anything about it, then it becomes more of a problem the next generation to come.
That's one thing that frustrates me. I mean, when I start, well, I'm getting older now, but you want things to change fast, you want to do a lot, you have the energy, and things don't, how do you say, so, getting into working together with people I know on the island, you want to change things, you want to solve things, you want to, and I think one thing that I've learned is that that I can't think that I myself am going to make that change. I have to do it together with everyone. It's a group effort, and so I think that's the thing that I'm going to be focusing on for the rest of my life. I was just saying that a while ago. It's a lifetime commitment. If you want to work on this kind of work, it's not something you do in one project. It's not something that you do in a short amount of time. It's really something that you commit to and that you will be working on with the rest of your life. And I'm ready to that. When I work with my other brother, and we kind of been laughing at each other till the end, But that's why I'm so positive, because I look at successful work now when I see Robert sitting here and giving his opinion, and he's been sharing his work. He was just in Uberhaus and he showed his work at the Uberhaus Film Festival this year. He traveled to Indonesia for 3 months, did cultural exchange work there. You went to Norway. You've done all these amazing things. You've been to other places, and so I think, we've had moments together I'm back now, but I'm so frustrated because then, but you know what I mean? Then you think, I want things to change faster, But I think, Robert now actually, he's going to move to Borneo where his mom is living, and he's going to be starting to do his own work there. And I think it's nice to maybe share a little bit. These are just plans. You don't have to feel pressure that you, but I think it's nice to share.
hindi ko naman na iniwanan yung Bantayan Island kasi we have only one world. So, ang ano ko lang is parang na-stuck ko sa mga siguro problema, lahat ng problema, lahat tayo may problema, di ba? Family problem, financial problem, lahat. So, gusto ko lang is yung yung natutunan ko is gusto ko ring i-share sa family ko kasi hindi ako naglaki sa mama ko talaga kasi doon lang ako lumalaki sa lola ko, tapos lola ko is she's blind, so pinapalaki doon talaga ako inaalaga ko siya, so yun yung nag-motivate sa akin na para pagpatuloy yung pag-aaral kahit ano lang, kahit yung school doon is hindi masyadong, siguro sabi ko lang hindi masyadong magaling kasi puro lang sila parang gawin ka lang nilang machine o pagkatapos graduate ka, punta ka na doon o sulong ka na doon, parang hindi ganun parang gusto ko talagang yung free, tapos ma-express ko yung idea ko, yung gusto kong gawin sa aking buhay. So, sabi ko kay Martha na, ate, gusto mo na akong gusto kong nung hirap explain, yung hanapin mo yung sarili mo. Ganun lang. Tapos, gusto ko rin mag-start doon ng hindi, bagong virus. So, maliit lang yung barangay na tinitirahan ng mama ko, so gusto ko rin i-share yung mga experience ko about dancing kasi doon yung nag-spark yung energy, lalo na yung same kayo ng passion. Okay, lahat gagawa. So, doon yung nag-work. Kasi pag hindi yung kasama mo hindi nag-work, so kill mo na agad. Ayoko na. So, ganun.
Mag-contact mga batan. So he's gonna work with also young people in Leyte.
Pero pupunta din ako ng Bantayan. So, okay, I have...
We're gonna do exchanges.
Back up.
We're just expanding. Share.
That's my favorite thing about you, Martha, is your generosity and your nurturing and your virus factor. And I think that this is, personally for me, it's super inspiring to hear how this virus is expanding and how located you are. I think that's...
Well, it's kind of strange because we've been together, he's like my younger brother, so in the beginning it was like, I'm gonna go to Leyte, and I was like, wait, you're not ready, you have to be sure that everything, you have to plan, but now, I think, I totally understand, totally support that, and then, and it's been nice, we've been talking about it a lot, about, what we're saying, it's not about one place, it's about, it's not about that one place that you have to be, it's about what you're doing, and it's the sharing can continue anywhere. That's why it's so nice to have this opportunity that we are here together, and that we can say we're neighbors, and we have so much in common, and so if he's going to go to the next island in Leyte, it just means that we are broadening everything, so it's exciting, yeah.
That's my favorite thing about this exhibition. So thank you for that. Is that what we put up is a thing, but there's all this other stuff, man, and it's like really overwhelmingly and then we just put up some things, but the Malaysian government is now selling stateless people's hands.
Yeah, no, I guess the point is there are changes that happen through the practices that were unthinkable were impossible. And these are really long-term efforts. But long-term efforts, as we all know, are made by little things. By being consistent, by being present, by sharing, helping each other out. There's so many parts to this show. We made it our last show for 2019 because we felt it really, truly celebrated what it is to be part of this region and to be working with these artists. And I guess, if you guys, do you have anything else to say? Yeah.
So my plan for the generation, my place is very, very beautiful, especially water. And I want, and maybe I can, last years I can talk to the big government and help to these islands in the one ecotourism to this community, because this is the very important to the finding and sustainability. Yes, and yes, yes, I can help. So my plan also is this community and this island is very, very learn how to protect area in this island. So I want protected area also. Yeah, this is my plan.
Nagpapasalamat po ako sa organizers and for I-Lann and other artists, kay Martha for inviting me all the way from Tawi-Tawi, from one small island there sa dulo ng Pilipinas facing Sulu Sea. I took a pump boat, actually ride pump boat kahapon all the way coming into Manila. It's a long day. And pasalamat ako dahil through this show, nalaman niyo yung aming issues, and also I'm promoting our cultural heritage, safeguarding our heritage, because it's the last thing that we have sa aming cultural integrity namin bilang bangsasama or Sama Bantayan tribe. And just like in our place, I'm trying to convince our mayor to revitalize our culture because he's a new mayor, and I convinced him to celebrate our foundation day with a cultural theme instead of the regular theme. So by July 1, we have the first municipal day, foundation day, and try to revive our old cultural traditions, cultural sports, and revitalizing the Vinta sale, the one with the outrigger boats. So we have contests for that. Yung Vinta, because right now, Zamboanga City is promoting it as a regatta Zamboanga, but actually it's Sama, it's from Tawi-Tawi, it's a Sama Banjao culture, and they're capitalizing on it. So, well, there's no harm to it if it's appropriated properly, that it's Sama culture, and they're promoting it. But then, sa amin, like for us, we should be doing it all the more. Dapat kami muna. So, I thank you for this kind of opportunity for bringing me.
Can I just say, I think, sorry, everyone wants to go home. But with Tawi-Tawi, Sulu, between Sabah and Sulu, we're always hearing trouble in the Sulu Sea and Abu Sayyaf and all this. But to me, one of the solutions is precisely that, is to have self-empowerment and to be proud of who you are and what your culture is. So it's not just the banig, it's not just weaving, it's a income on that, which is so important, the economic aspect of it. It is plain rude to ignore that aspect, but beyond that, it's the empowerment of a person and who they are and their strength of spirit, so that they know who they are and what they want. And it's the same in Sabah with so many issues that we have. And to me, these are really hard to talk about, but core issues. And it's very fundamental to communities that I think that would, and it has real-time current affairs repercussions. So it's important. The conference that we met at, the Sama Bajau International Maritime Conference, is end of April in Semporna with the Lepa Lepa Regatta. We'll be there, the three of us. So if you're interested to come visit Sabah, come in end of April to Semporna.